The story of a British woman named Dena Thompson, nicknamed the Black Widow, became in the mid-20s one of the main topics for numerous documentaries, TV shows, and crime programs. This pleasant at first glance woman turned out to be a pathological liar, fraudster, and led to the grave at least one man who loved her wholeheartedly. Dena repeatedly managed to escape punishment, but in 2003, she was still in the dock, despite the fact that she was facing life imprisonment. The court was surprisingly mild, allowing parole. So, in 2022, one of the most dangerous criminals, who miraculously survived her ex-husband, characterized as pure evil, went free. Thompson's victims were always men, which, according to experts, may indicate some kind of trauma received by the criminal in childhood or adolescence. However, Dena's early years were quite prosperous. The girl was born in 1960 in North London and brought up in a full family. Her parents lived modestly, but did everything to ensure that their daughter did not need anything. The head of the family worked as a prison guard, seriously engaged in sports, and from childhood motivated Dena to attend gyms, where she diligently engaged in gymnastics. In addition, the man often participated in all kinds of sports competitions, including those held in other countries, and constantly took his daughter with him. Dena grew up quite active, cheerful, and sociable child. She easily made acquaintances and friendships with peers, and with age, learned to quickly win the attention of guys she liked. After school, the girl went to college and then got a job in one of the local banks. At the age of 22 years, Dena met her future first spouse, Lee Wyatt. They first met thanks to the cousin of the guy who organized a couple's blind date. Between young people, immediately burst feelings, and a stormy romance began. They got along well, spent a lot of time together, and 2 years later, officially legalized their relationship. After the wedding, the couple moved to a provincial place called Yapton, with a population of only 3,000 people. Soon, the couple had a son, and the new parents began to slowly develop their own business, creating Author's soft toys, the images of which they invented together. In parallel, Dena worked as a cashier in a construction organization, and their family, according to neighbors, was quite happy and prosperous. The head of the family was often away on business matters and was absent from home for long periods of time. With neighbors, the man practically did not communicate, but his wife, on the contrary, quickly made acquaintances with local residents. Dena knew how to win the favor of others easily, rubbed in the trust. In addition, men often paid attention to the attractive young woman and even tried to court her. At the dawn of the 90s, Dena met with a young journalist whose name was Julian Webb. The man offered her to work as a model for advertising clothing and household appliances, and soon her pictures were painted on the pages of local newspapers and magazines. Dena was eager to pose and felt at ease in front of the camera. By then, Lee Wyatt hadn't been home for months, and none of the neighbors had any idea where he was or why he'd been gone so long. His wife apparently did not miss him too much, having had an affair with Julian. Just 3 months after meeting, the journalist introduced the chosen one to his parents, saying that he was going to marry her. Subsequently, Webb's mother recalled that she was quite surprised by such a hasty decision of her son. In addition, a potential daughter-in-law who was a few years older than Julian did not inspire her confidence. When the neighbors learned about the upcoming wedding, they were puzzled because they knew that Dena is already legally married to another man. However, her husband hadn't been home for months, and no one knew for sure where he was or what was wrong with him. As it later turned out, all this time, Lee was in the small town of New Quay, located almost on the other side of the country. There, he lived under an assumed name and false documents, hiding, as he thought, from the mafia. In fact, the man became a victim of skillful lies of his wife, who convinced him that their family was in mortal danger and this is the only way out. The couple, as mentioned, were engaged in creating Author's soft toys, and their most successful creation was Leprechaun Sean, which sold well and gained a certain popularity in early 1991. Dinah told her husband that their creation was interested in the corporation Disney and was ready to pay £50 million for the opportunity to use this character. However, the joy was short-lived, and soon the woman reported that representatives of the criminal world, having learned about the big deal, wanted to get most of the money, threatening otherwise to kill the whole family. Dinah also came up with a way out of the situation, convincing her husband that he needed to hide. Lee quickly acquired fake documents and went on the run. But before this, the cunning woman persuaded Lee to write several threatening letters to her and make several similar records of phone calls, which allegedly were supposed to be proof that he hates his wife so that the mafia would stop pursuing her. The trusting husband, not suspecting anything, did as his wife told him to do, and then fled. In a foreign city, with no home or friends, Lee was ready to take on any job, and all the money he earned was sent to his wife and son so that his family did not need anything. Most likely, this escape really saved his life, but the threat came not from fictional bandits but from his own wife. In November of the same year, 1991, Dinah married her new favorite, Julian, and the wedding couple played on the very money that Lee faithfully sent home. Deceived, Lee Webb was madly in love and happy. But soon after the wedding, neighbors began to notice that the woman regularly visits lovers while her husband was at work. After a while, she informed Julian that she was terminally ill and was fired from her job because of it. The story with a fatal diagnosis and dismissal turned out to be a lie from the first to the last word. And it also turned out that from the accounts of the company where Dinah worked, a large amount of money was missing, and the main suspect in this crime was herself. Then, the woman accused her first husband, Lee Wyatt, who allegedly forced her to commit the crime by threats. As evidence, she provided the very letters and audio recordings that she herself had previously convinced him to make. Wyatt himself returned home as soon as he learned that his spouse had remarried. The case was limited to a scandal, and although Dinah claimed that he had beaten her, there was no evidence of this. Nevertheless, the detective sided with the woman, so Lee again had to leave Yapton in a hurry. In love, Julian's situation did not embarrass him at all, and he gave his wife all his savings for the treatment of her fictitious fatal disease. But time passed, the money melted, and the husband began to wonder how the treatment was progressing. It turned out that the woman did not have a single medical document confirming her diagnosis. Relationships in the family broke down. Neighbors heard how the spouses fought loudly, and in June 1994, the day after celebrating Julian's 31st birthday, he died suddenly. The evening before the tragedy, his mother called him, but Dinah reported that her husband wasn't feeling well and couldn't answer. Julian's mother asked her sister-in-law to call an ambulance, but she ignored her request. The expert examination showed that the young man died of a drug overdose, but for some reason, no one saw a criminal trace in this tragedy, and his wife insisted that her husband voluntarily decided to kill himself. In addition, she demanded that Julian's body was cremated, but his parents were strongly opposed to this. Also, after the death of her husband, Dinah tried to get a large insurance payment, but she was denied because their marriage was recognized as invalid. At the funeral, Dinah did not even try to cry or depict grief. On the contrary, she chose a frank outfit and behaved defiantly. Almost immediately afterward, the widowed woman began to spin numerous novels and affairs. She openly brought lovers to her house, not hiding from the neighbors. Only in 1997 did Dinah file a divorce from her first legal husband, and less than a year later, she met Richard Thompson, who immediately managed to charm her. Dinah, not thinking long, told the new lover that she suffers from a serious illness and she has to live a very short time. Blinded by love, the man said that he would turn the last months of her life into a fairy tale and is ready to spend all his savings for this. The wedding couple played in one of the best hotels in Florida, where they spent their honeymoon, and then returned to their native England, settling on its southern coast in the city of Brighton. According to Richard's memories, his wife literally bewitched him with her care and support, and she also skillfully pretended to share all his views and aspirations. He has always dreamed of owning his own boat to professionally engage in fishing, and his wife not only approved this idea but also offered him to open a company that provides a yacht for rent so that he could not only fish himself but also teach it to others. Less than a year after the wedding, during a New Year's Eve celebration, Dena gave her husband a romantic dinner. They took a bath together, and afterward, she said she had prepared a special gift and asked her husband's permission to tie him up. Richard, not suspecting anything wrong, readily agreed. But as soon as he had the ropes on his hands, a blindfold over his eyes, and a gag in his mouth, he was suddenly struck hard on the head with a bat, followed by another. Luckily, Richard did not only not lose consciousness, but managed to free himself quickly. Then, Dena grabbed a knife and wounded her husband in the shoulder. Richard knocked the weapon out of his wife's hands, immobilized her, and called the police. Dena burst into tears, admitted that all this time she had lied to him and spent all his money. However, already at the station, she pulled herself together and began to claim that it was her husband who attacked her, and she was only defending herself. The story did not end there, and a day later, a real estate agent came to Richard's house to sell the house. He had an appointment with the landlady, who warned him that her husband had left for America on a business trip. At that moment, Richard realized that his wife was planning to kill him, sell the house, and run away with the money. No one would look for Thompson himself for a long time, thinking that he had gone across the ocean. In the course of court proceedings, it turned out that the woman had withdrawn all the money from her husband's bank accounts, forging his signature, and also used his credit cards, accumulating a lot of debts. The case gained wide resonance, and other men began to apply to the police, former lovers of Dena, whom she deceived and cleaned to the thread, telling about a fictitious incurable disease. Then also remembered, and the first husband of the woman who had to hide for many years first from her fictitious pursuers, from the mafia, and then from the police. It was finally revealed that it was Dena who stole the company in which she worked, accusing her husband of everything. However, the jury, despite the presence of irrefutable evidence, acquitted the woman in the case of the attack on her husband, Richard Thompson. And Richard himself was accused of seeking to attract attention to himself by making up such a story. Nevertheless, Dena was found guilty of numerous financial frauds and sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. The hype around Dena Thompson also reminded about the strange, sudden death of her second husband, journalist Julian Webb. The woman herself told completely different versions and circumstances of his death. She said that her husband was poisoned by steroids, which he took to keep himself in shape, then claimed that he drank a lot and fell asleep in the sun, getting sunstroke. And at the inquest, and in general, said that he took his own life. Despite her caution, Dena once confessed to her best friend that she had poisoned her husband by putting potent drugs in a spicy dish that he adored. The police managed to track down the owner of the diner, where Julian often dined, and ordered food to take home. He recalled that the day before the tragedy, Webb's wife took out rice and chicken curry. And then, the investigators guessed that it was this seasoning that interrupted the specific flavor of the drugs. In connection with the newly discovered circumstances, a new investigation was initiated, and Julian's body was exhumed and sent for examination. As it turned out, the man was poisoned by a large dose of powerful antidepressants added to his favorite dish with curry and strengthened their effect, aspirin, which Dena dissolved in her husband's drink. At the time of the call to his mother, Webb was still alive, and he could be saved, but it was not part of the plans of his wife. In 2003, the Black Widow was finally brought to trial. The investigator at the hearing characterized her as the most dangerous woman he had ever had to deal with, and the judge noted that she was a skilled and very dodgy liar. Dena Thompson was sentenced to life in prison, but with parole eligibility after 16 years. The story of the crimes of the Black Widow formed the basis of numerous documentary detectives, actively discussed in TV shows and mused in the press even after Dena was behind bars. Detectives unearthed another dark story from her past. As it turned out, one of her first lovers disappeared without a trace, and to this day has not been found alive or dead. Thank you for watching the entire video. Hello, and see you again in the new video.